Welcome to another episode of the Your Longevity Blueprint podcast. Today, my guest is Natalie Schroeder, who's a registered nurse who's been working in the health and wellness industry for over 25 years. She's managed a dental practice, worked as an RN in the hospital at the bedside and in critical care, and eventually transitioned to a medical spa where she worked as an injector. She also coaches fitness classes and is passionate about the health and wellness of her 4 children and being the best version of herself. Beautiful. Great bio. Welcome to the show, Natalie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, our paths recently crossed as you are our rep for some new devices that we brought into the clinic that have been very popular. And I really wanted to dive into these, just spending more time on the show to share with the audience because we have an upcoming event we're going to talk about at the end. But before we get into the devices and really the strength that you bring to us as a clinic, tell us your story. So tell us why you became a nurse, kind of tell us about the positions you've had, but ultimately how you ended up working in the aesthetics field and for BTL. And we'll get into later what BTL is. So tell us a little bit about yourself so we get to know you.
So I've been a nurse actually since about 2014, so just a little over 10 years. And I was interested in going back to school as an adult because I had some experiences as a mother, especially with breastfeeding, that motivated me to want to be able to help others with those struggles and trials. So I went back to school as an adult with 3 young children. I have 4 now, so I've since had another child, but my passion was for helping others. So initially I wanted to become a lactation consultant, but I fell in love with the elderly population and ended up starting on the medical floor, which was the best stepping stone to the rest of my career. Sorry, we have a guest there.
Everybody has a dog or a cat. It's fine.
Yes, it's essential to our wellness, right? So I started on the medical floor, worked in critical care in the recovery room, the post-anesthesia care unit, but I always had a passion for wellness. I eventually started health coaching a little bit and doing some fitness coaching. And through that experience, I met some people in the medical spa space. I was offered a position in a med spa in Dubuque, my hometown in Iowa, and decided to take a leap of faith and start my journey in aesthetics. After working for a few years in aesthetics, I really started to find some interest, I guess, in the reps that would stop in. They always had the most current education, updates about our services and our products that we were offering, about the devices. And I was always eager to sit down and have meetings with them. And that's when I discovered BTL. We were looking for some new aesthetics in our med spa, and I had heard about BTL's devices through that process. So long story short, eventually I found BTL, interviewed for a position, and after 7 meetings, I was finally offered a position as a practice success manager. So here I am. That's been since about 12 months ago last year. So it's been quite a journey and very exciting. My passion for aesthetics and wellness can be combined as a practice success manager for BTL. I'm now the area director of practice success, so I not only get to help my accounts, but I get to help other BTL staff members as well.
That's a better way of saying you're our rep. You're our practice success manager. I like that. Yeah. You're here to help us be successful. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, tell
What
me.
sets BTL apart from other device companies
Yeah.
is that a large post-sale support team. So
Yes. Yes.
yeah, dedicates a lot of revenue to that post-sale support team, which again, I think sets them apart from most medical device companies.
Well, tell us about this device company. So, what is BTL Aesthetics?
So BTL is currently the global leader in medical device manufacturing, and it's a #1 aesthetic device company in the world. And they cross over into the wellness space because they not only have an aesthetics department, but we also have a cardiology device department, a physical therapy device department based out of Prague, Czech Republic. And so lots of different areas as far as the devices go, but they are very innovative. We have a team of over 500 engineers that are constantly developing new solutions to concerns. And like I said, crossing over into the functional wellness space as well as aesthetics. So it's a perfect combination for me.
It's been a good addition for our clinic as well. I remember when the initial, I guess you would call him the sales rep, stopped by the clinic, and I have a pretty strong, we'll just say a brick wall up front, as far as not a lot of sales reps get in to our clinic just because I'm busy seeing patients. And this rep was rather persistent and also very positive, very supportive. And we're glad that we took the meeting because we've been able to add some great devices to our practice. So I want to get into those. So let's kind of talk about the 2 main devices that we've brought onto our clinic here in 2024, and then we'll get into I guess not all, but some of the other devices we have yet to add. So let's talk about the Emsella Chair and the Emsculpt Neo, and you can go in whatever order you'd like. or I'll say you talk about these much more eloquently than I do because I'm still relatively new
Yes,
new to
yeah.
this. So let's break down
And
the technology used in the devices and kind of what clients they serve, what they do.
And I will say I'm continuing to learn every single day. This past weekend, we actually had a functional health and wellness summit in Chicago. And I take away so many new pieces of information every time I attend an event with BTL because we're constantly innovating and changing and
Mhm.
developing. So there are some new FDA clearances coming out on the devices that you have. Very, very exciting time with BTL. So we typically break things down into face and body. So
Sure.
we kind of compartmentalize our devices into the face and the body. And the two devices you have are body devices. So first we'll talk about the Emsella Chair.
Yes.
The Emsella Chair is a chair, just like it sounds. And it's basically a non-invasive option for treatment of urinary incontinence and intimate wellness. So many of the treatments available for people who struggle with urinary incontinence in all different forms are invasive and take a long time to have results. So whether it's pelvic floor physical therapy, surgical procedures, et cetera, there can be a lot of downtime. And it can be very expensive, or with those therapy methods, it can take a long time to see results. So you have an option now for your patients to address those concerns that's non-invasive, fully clothed, and can be completed in a matter of 3 weeks. So the treatment regimen with the
Mhm.
Emsculpt Care is twice a week for 3 weeks for a total of 6 treatments. It addresses concerns such as, like I said, urinary incontinence. And I always ask the question, do you struggle with urinary incontinence? And a lot of people will say, no, I don't. But then I say, do you wake up at night to urinate? Excuse me. Do you leak when you cough or sneeze? And they say
Mhm.
yes. And those are symptoms of urinary incontinence. So we
Yep.
can experience different types of urinary incontinence, whether it be stress incontinence or urge incontinence. And some people have a mixed incontinence or both types. And the Emsella Chair can help with all of those concerns. So like I said, fully clothed, non-invasive, you sit on the chair.
It
And this
sounds too good to be true, but you literally, for the
it
audience, you
really
literally
is.
sit on this. It's quite a fancy, professional looking
Yes,
chair,
yeah.
but you sit on it fully clothed. Yes, and then carry on.
Okay. It's a big chair. It's very, very heavy because
Uh-huh.
it contains amazing technology. On the chair, you sit fully clothed in a certain position. So with a flat back, straight back, nice upright position. We have armrests on the chair. It's a 28-minute treatment. And basically the chair delivers some energy that creates a supramaximal pelvic floor contraction. So the pelvic floor lies at the base of the torso. And it's a structure that supports all of the organs in the lower part of the abdomen. As we age, just like every other muscle in the body, it thins and elongates and can become almost like a sling instead of a stage like it was intended to be. So when that sling or that stage becomes a sling, starts to stretch out, everything falls with it. So everything that it's supporting can fall. And that can lead to symptoms of urinary incontinence. The process can be quickened by childbirth. People who do plyometric types of exercise or high impact types of exercise like
Sure.
runners. So sometimes people experience those symptoms earlier in life, but most people eventually have some symptoms of pelvic floor dysfunction just because of the fact that the aging process is happening in all of us. So males and females alike, the Emsella Chair can treat all patients 18 or greater, and it can make a big difference in those symptoms.
Let's break down kind of the female and the male treatment
Sure.
per se, but let's go back to the technology. So
Yep.
you were highlighting the advanced technology. Can you describe that, explain that
Yes.
for our audience?
Yeah, so this chair utilizes high FEM technology, and that stands for high intensity focused electromagnetic energy. And essentially, that energy penetrates the pelvic floor. So it can penetrate up to 11 centimeters deep. And it penetrates enough to create the super maximal contraction of that pelvic floor muscle. So a lot of us have heard of the term Kegel exercise. So
Mm-hmm.
we're encouraged as women to perform Kegels on a daily basis, which is essentially contracting that pelvic floor on our own. As you know, it is difficult to contract that floor, and trying to do it for a minute straight is exhausting for
Yeah.
most people. With the Emsella Chair, we can perform about 10 to 11,000 of those contractions in that 28-minute treatment. So
Say
as
that
you
again. Say that again.
can, 10 to 11,000 contractions. The equivalent of about 10 to 11,000 Kegel contractions.
Yeah.
That's in that 28-minute treatment. So if you're doing that twice a week, we're able to create repositioning and strengthening and awakening of that pelvic floor muscle. And this can have so many benefits. So things like waking up at night. I've had people who wake up 3 times a night, being able to take it down to 1 or none. I've
Yep.
had people, I have a story actually this past weekend, a woman shared a story about a man who was experiencing erectile dysfunction and basically hadn't been able to have an erection
Yeah.
in years. And after a series of Emsella Chair treatments, he was able to have an erection. So that is life-changing for a male in
Yeah.
his 60s. I also recently watched a video of a woman talking about her experience. She was a mother of a few children, and liked to participate in activities like jumping on the trampoline with her kiddos, but she was unable to jump with them because every time she would pour urine, like not just leaking, but a lot. And after a series of Emsella Chair treatments, she was able to jump on the trampoline with no leaking at all. So it definitely can be life-changing for people.
I think that's the audience that the chair has been most popular for, the mothers who want to be able to jump on the trampoline or go running again or do something that they haven't been able to do since having three, four, however many children. So I think that's really serviced those patients. So from a female standpoint, you've given us some good examples. Let's go back to like what men are good candidates for the Emsella chair.
So we have studies on the Emsella Chair, all of our devices. Actually, we have a total of over 80 studies on our technology, and they're published and reviewed. So we have those studies available. If you ever want to see them, please reach out to me. But anyway, we have studies on post-prostatectomy, erectile dysfunction, or urinary incontinence in
Sure.
males. So different studies for different indications, but basically any male who is experiencing frequency, so
Yep.
having to urinate on a frequent basis, night waking, or leaking when he coughs or sneezes, or that inability to start and stop, and then erectile dysfunction, of course. So I have males who are experiencing no urinary incontinence symptoms. They're in their early 30s, but they just want to improve their intimate
Mhm.
wellness experience. They're
Sure.
great. So actually every male over 80 or 18, excuse me, can benefit, whether it be intimate wellness or urinary incontinence or both. And we have settings for both types of treatments. But typically people do feel improvement in their symptoms after a series of 6 treatments.
We had patients who, you know, I'll be totally honest, I was a little skeptical about this chair at first because I thought, okay, this is like a chair that,
Yeah.
that does all that. And really, however, after our first launch event, just some of the women who did the demo had called back, even after just the demo, saying, oh my gosh, like I didn't leak when I sneezed yesterday, or they were already noticing improvement. And my whole staff was thinking, holy smokes, this is all what it's cracked up to be. Like, this is going to be incredible. And we've continued to have that good feedback from patients. So I'm even more excited than I initially was because I was again skeptical, but my skepticism has been misproven.
Yeah. It
um,
actually has a 95% patient satisfaction rate.
which is
Um,
insane, which is
and
awesome. Yeah, yeah, I believe it. Yeah, I believe it.
yes, I hear stories every single day about positive changes that come with the treatment of pelvic floor dysfunction and urinary incontinence or intimate wellness with the Emsella chair. So constant stories, they're all over. Check out Instagram. You can definitely pull up some stories about people who love their Emsella chair treatments. I always tell my providers, you won't really have to call your patients for their maintenance treatments. They'll be calling you. So
Let's go there for a second. So you said the initial protocol is 2 a week for 3 weeks, and
yes,
then pending. Again, some patients want to be proactive, so they may want to come in for maintenance treatment once a quarter or whatnot, or pending how serious or not serious their symptoms were, that can kind of determine when they're going to come back for maintenance. But just like
exactly.
as you've explained to me, just like if you're going to the gym and you're working any muscle, it's not that you're going to do the protocol once and you're done, like for the rest of your life. You're going to
Right.
probably want to resume some sort of maintenance to keep those muscles strong.
Yeah. So I always explain whenever you're doing a muscle building service, whether it be working out in the gym or Emsella Chair or your Emsculpt Neo or even the facial muscle
Mhm.
devices, we have to remember that anytime you don't utilize a muscle, it can atrophy. So if you're not using it to that level, we are
Yep.
going to lose some of what we've built. So muscle maintenance requires just that maintenance treatments, and it's
Mhm.
variable based on the patient's symptoms and the amount of improvement that they get. So we always evaluate patients before their treatments, evaluate immediately after, and then recommend that they come back a month or two after their treatment so that we can see how they're progressing, how they're feeling, and whether or not they need maintenance. And then the schedule of maintenance is determined based on exactly what I talked about, the symptoms. So it's variable. I see a lot of people doing monthly maintenance, several doing quarterly. Some are able to stretch it out to twice a year, just again, depending on age, weakness, but we're reawakening that pelvic floor. So
Yeah.
course, if you're an older patient and it's been years since you've done any treatments to your pelvic floor, sometimes you require a little bit more maintenance, and it just is very dependent on the person.
Sure. So we've kind of talked about who is a good candidate, who is not a great candidate, what are the contraindications for using this technology?
So contraindications, we don't typically recommend and can't do treatments on people who are pregnant or trying to get pregnant, because obviously pelvic floor is right there near those female organs. So if you're pregnant or
Yeah.
trying to get pregnant, we recommend that you wait. We don't like to treat people with implanted metal in the body because of the type of technology that we're utilizing. Any implanted like cardiac pacemaker or defibrillator in the area, or any spinal devices are contraindicated as well. Aside from that,
Even the Inspire, for
yeah,
sleep apnea, if there's some surgically implanted device in you, then unfortunately you're probably not a good candidate. We don't want to
right.
impact that device's efficacy. So yeah, safer to, yeah.
So aside from that, anyone over the age of 18, I've spoken with young females in their early 20s who have some symptoms of urge incontinence, and who have utilized the chair and have gotten great results. I always tell them, you've got young muscles, they're very easy to train. Now is the time to start, because if you're struggling now, and I always say that to people, if you're struggling now and you're 35 and you're maybe having to wake up once a night, 3 times a week, chances are in 10 years from now, that's going to progress. It's
Yeah,
always
good point. Yeah.
to try to treat. So I always say that's the best time to start the Emsella chair. Be consistent with it, stay in a routine, and hopefully you never get to the point where you're waking 3 times a night.
Wonderful. Perfect. Okay. Let's talk next about the Emsculpt Neo, which utilizes some of the similar technology. So maybe let's talk about the technology in that first, and then we'll talk about kind
Sure.
of what this device treats.
Okay, so Emsculpt Neo is our best-in-class body contouring device, and it utilizes two different types of energy. So we have that high-fem technology, which is that high-intensity focused electromagnetic energy combined with radio frequency. So when you combine high-fem with radio frequency, we're able to achieve two different things. We can actually build muscle, so add muscle mass to the treatment area, usually about 25% more muscle mass after a series of 4 treatments. And with the radio frequency, we're able to melt fat in the treatment area. So all of our studies show that after a series of 4 treatments, we are able to reduce fat in the treatment area by about 30%. We can treat multiple different body parts. So abs, flanks and love handles, or that muffin top area. We can treat the glutes. We can treat fronts and backs of thighs, inner and outer thighs, calves, biceps, triceps. So lots of different body parts. And this is the device that has some new treatment options available that are coming soon for different types of orthopedic concerns and injuries as well. So lots of new things coming. Like I said, BTL is very innovative, constantly adding options for our devices. They are built to expand and grow. So it's an amazing device. It has a lot of functional benefit. We also have studies that indicate we can reduce visceral fat.
Yes.
No other devices on the market that can attack visceral fat, but our studies show we're able to reduce visceral fat with abdominal treatments by about 18% after a series of 4 treatments. So that's pretty incredible.
And for the audience, that's the fat that's around your organs that can lead to chronic disease. So can't always necessarily, well, sometimes you can see it, but you can be skinny fat, right? You could still have fat around your organs
Right.
that we need to get rid of to reduce chronic disease risk. So that's incredible that can get rid of visceral fat. Tell me some fun statistics, like the numbers. I know with the Emsella Chair, you were saying a 28-minute session is equivalent to 12,000 kegels. Well, what's the equivalent of like HIIT training with using
So
Emsculpt?
with Emsculpt Neo, we create that super maximal contraction. We have heating in addition to the muscle contraction. So I always like to explain that when you're in the gym and you're working out and you're trying to do like bicep work or ab work, core work, for example, when we contract those muscles, we're really only able to achieve 40 to 50% of the ability of that muscle, the capability. When we use Emsculpt Neo, we can achieve 100%. So it's a contraction like you've never been able to achieve before. It gives you a bit of an edge on the competitor. We actually have professional NFL teams that have this device. We have many superstars like music artists, et cetera, all of the celebrities, because it is really best in class and can give you the best results when it comes to muscle mass building. So it actually performs 20,000 Kegels in a 30-minute treatment. So I always like to say it's as if you were doing 20,000 crunches. And we suspect that the calorie burn is somewhere around 250 calories in one 30-minute session. So that's just a little bit about what you can expect from one treatment. It's a series of 4 treatments. So once again, you're coming once a week for 4 weeks. And I
For
always say,
that body part, to be clear. Like, so if you want to do abs, we'll put the
yeah,
applicators on your abs once a week for 30
yep,
minutes for 4 weeks.
that's right.
Or if you're doing your glutes or whatever body part, right? So basically the stats that you've also listed previously, just to again reiterate these for the audience, do you say per location, per body
For
part, or per treatment area? That's a better way to say it. 30% fat loss, 25% muscle gain, and 18% visceral fat reduction, which is
which is,
amazing. Yeah.
it is amazing. I mean, we do have clearance to treat up to 3 areas in a day. So for example, if you
Yep.
wanted to treat your abdomen and you wanted to treat your flanks and love handles and your glutes all on the same day, you can. Many patients come in and treat their pelvic floor, their abs, and their glutes all on the same day. We call that our core to floor therapy.
Yeah. Expand on that. Yeah. Yeah.
That therapy is amazing for people who experience low back pain, want to improve their gait speed, or have just noticed an overall decrease in their strength in that core area. So we see significant improvement in patients who participate in that core to floor therapy. Again, you can do all three in one day. It takes about an hour and a half and you're finished. Some people do like to break it up, and that's all right. We separate treatments by about 5 to 10 days. You can do up to 3 in a week though. But yes, 5 to 10 days. So that gives you a little bit of flexibility. For example, if someone is on vacation or travels for work and they have to miss a week, it's okay. You have up to
Yep.
10 days to continue your series.
I was very interested in the core to floor, being that my listeners know, and we're now in season 5 of the podcast. However, in season 4, I was pregnant. So as the rep came in, of course, trying to, sell us this device, I could not demo the device because I was pregnant. However, my
Yeah.
husband could. And so we put, the listeners know Eric, my husband, he's our office manager at the clinic. He was able to demo from an ab standpoint. He had the ab applicator on. And interestingly, the next day he woke up and he said, this is interesting. I don't have back pain.
Yes.
Which was
I always tell my
incredible for the short demo that he had. But
I always tell people that I know I'm due for a Neo when I start to experience back pain. I ride in the car a lot
yeah,
because
yeah,
in the state of Iowa, some of Wisconsin and Illinois. But that Emsculpt Neo helps me with core stability. I also coach fitness classes, so I can usually exceed what my college student classmates are able to achieve, which is a lot of fun too. But yes, Emsculpt Neo is super powerful. It's great for young moms, people who've
mhm,
these, within the last year or two and are experiencing that core weakness that most of us do experience after having children, especially if you've had multiple births or C-sections and you're not able to work out for quite some time. It definitely can restore that strength to the core. So it's got an aesthetic benefit, obviously, but I always
right.
like to talk about the functional benefit being so much more amazing. We can actually treat concerns like diastasis recti with our Emsculpt Neo as well. So I had a woman with a 4-finger separation bring it down to 1. And she actually was researching online to find options to treat her diastasis. And pretty much
Yeah,
everything she was seeing was surgical. And she came across Emsculpt Neo, used our provider finder to find a provider in Pocahontas, Iowa, and had her treatments there. And again, after just a series of 4 treatments, she brought that finger separation down to just 1. And that made a huge difference
yeah,
for her.
without surgery. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. My
So
my my other interest, of course, being that I was pregnant, was okay, well, after I have this baby, maybe this will help me with my core and help me lose weight. And so listeners now know I've had my child. And so I was really excited. I had had a C-section, and I will be sharing that journey on the podcast as well. However, if you've had a C-section, which I've now had 2, you know what it feels like, following that. I had a rough delivery, kind of rough recovery. And I've always exercised, but this was different. This was very hard. Even just sitting up out of bed, you just feel like there's nothing there. You can't control your abs. There's just no strength there. And I know enough to know you shouldn't run right after having a baby, but I was looking forward to eventually being able to at least jog and run a little bit. And
yeah.
so which I couldn't. I mean, getting on the treadmill, I was just like, I had no abs.
No.
So, but after one session of Emsculpt Neo on my abs, I just felt like, whoa, I'm back. I felt like I finally had some almost control. I just felt like everything was just jiggly and loose, and there was just no muscle there. And so I've been really pleased, and I have lost weight around my midsection as well. But I did, once a week sessions. I think I've done 5 now, maybe, and I've been very pleased. So as a new mom, I can, I haven't sat on the Emsella chair yet. I was waiting. Waiting to do that, but that's my next. I was kind of doing one thing at a time here.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially if you
I
want to get to running, it'll definitely help with that pelvic
Yes,
floor health and prevent leaking. I actually have people who don't really struggle with pelvic floor health, but there have been a couple of runners who want to be able to make it through a half marathon or a marathon without
Yeah.
having to urinate, because obviously that impacts your time,
Yeah, that
right?
makes sense.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
people come in just for that, just for the purpose of a race, and have noticed that they are able to complete a race without having to stop. So that's a big deal when you're trying to compete for a time. And just so many moms who discuss how this chair and that Emsculpt Neo
Yep.
changed their lives, because that weakness can really impact our ability to be active with our kiddos too. And all of us want to be able to do that. So
Yep. So to be clear again for the listeners, the core to four program is putting the applicator on the belly, so the abs once a
mhm.
week for 4 weeks, and then also sitting on the chair once a week, well, twice a week for 3 weeks. So it's combining the
Yep.
pelvic floor with the abs, essentially. That's kind of the core to floor
Yeah,
program.
I typically
Yep.
recommend that people include the gluteus
Glutes.
treatments as well, the
Yeah,
glutes, yes. Because the glutes are so essential to movement,
sure,
and functionality,
sure.
especially as we age. Most of us can say that we notice some descending of those glute muscles. And so thinking about just the difference in the way that they look, think about the ability to perform. So if you include the abs in your core to floor, as well as the glutes and the pelvic floor, I think that gives you the best overall result. So that's 3 treatment areas,
Yeah,
all in one.
yeah. One day. Yep, yep,
Yep. Yep.
absolutely. So we've kind of talked about who are good candidates for this device. And again, let's go over like who would not be a good candidate, or is that the same as the Emsella chair?
Pretty much the same. So once again, if you have implanted metal, any implanted medical device, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, we recommend waiting. Um, and that's really it. So very similar to the Emsella chair.
Sure. Do you have any other patient examples of different like body treatment areas? You had that diastasis recti.
Yes, so I recently spoke with a woman in Cherokee, Iowa, and she completed a series of leg treatments. So several different leg areas as well as glutes. And
Yeah.
she's in her late 70s, and she is someone who was unable to walk in the grass because of stabilities. Now she's a thin,
Wow.
not overweight, just probably a little under muscle. So she was struggling with her gait, walking on uneven surfaces, excuse me. She also had previously in her life been someone who went for a walk every single day. She said 3 to 5 miles, and she really could only walk about a mile without getting super tired and
Mm,
weak. So she completed a series of leg and glute treatments, and she came back because this customer actually purchased a facial device. So I was there for another launch event, and she came back and she was elated and telling me her story about how she could now walk 3 to 5 miles a day, walk through the grass without worrying about falling. And her family was supportive of her continuing treatments because they were always worried about her risk for a fall. So that was pretty exciting to hear. I've
yeah.
also had people talk to me about, they're in their later 50s, early 60s, women who've always done things like Pilates workouts or weightlifting or any type of exercise. And they just noticed that gradual decrease in strength, which is normal for all of us. And it was frustrating because they couldn't participate in the workouts that they had always done. So I had a woman in Iowa City talking to me about how she completed a series of abdominal treatments. And after 6 treatments, she felt like her old self again, like her 15 years ago self.
Wow.
To work out like she used to, and that made her super excited. So she was going to start an Edge series. So lots and lots of great stories about how this device can change lives as well.
I want to go back to the body treatment areas because we've talked about pelvic floor and abs, but let's just kind of briefly go over all those areas again. So from an arm standpoint, like when you have the bat wings, right, you can do the
Yes.
biceps and triceps. I don't know if you want to expand on that at all.
Sure.
Yeah.
So a lot of women, especially when it comes to strength, we are weakest in our upper body. So I actually recently had an in-body scan, and I'm someone who's fit and I work out on a regular basis. I coach classes, I lift weights, but my upper body is definitely a little bit more weak than my lower body. So the physician I was working with said, when you do your weight training, focus on your upper body, because as you continue to age, that difference is only going to become greater. So especially in women, that upper body strength is difficult to maintain. So I always recommend arm treatments for people who are starting to experience that weakness. Their ADLs become a little bit more difficult, but also for the younger woman who is an athlete, again, wants to have an edge on the competitor. And then the aesthetic side of things, a lot of us struggle with the bat wing. That's an area where we start to experience some laxity, and that loss of muscle mass just makes all the skin fall because of gravity, of course. So it can help with that laxity and that bat wing look as well. So
Sure.
definitely experience some circumference reduction, but that improvement in strength is huge. We can treat the muscles individually. So we have smaller applicators that look a little bit different than the abdominal applicators, and they can be moved to address biceps or triceps or both, one of each.
Yeah, yeah. And then legs, let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned glutes. We can put the applicators on the glutes, but
Yes.
talk a little bit about legs because we can do inner, outer thighs, quads, like
Yes.
expand on that.
So I always say fronts of thighs, backs of thighs, but it's basically quads and hamstrings. So again, if someone is struggling with gait speed or balance, it's an excellent treatment to improve strength in the legs. If someone is an athlete and they want to improve their strength, maybe they're getting into a competition or something like that, it's an excellent treatment. For people who are concerned about that inner thigh and outer thigh area, it's usually women who don't like that
Mhm.
spot. We've been able to reduce the inner thigh area by quite a bit and the outer thigh as well. So if you're someone who stores your fat there and you really want to tackle that fat, it's a perfect treatment for you. We can
That
also
would be
treat.
me, and I did try that too, and I do think it was helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. We have a lot of before and after photos circulating on Instagram, on our BTL website, and you can really see some major differences in that inner and outer thigh area for people who have that concern. I see patients quite frequently as I'm doing launch events with my customers, and that's a really common area for women. Some people say they've struggled with it their whole life. When they put weight on, it just goes right to that outer thigh area. So this is an awesome way to target specific areas that have always been a concern for you. So we get lots of people who say abdomen, lots of glutes, lots of inner and outer thighs. So whatever trouble area you've always struggled with, this device can help you. And then lastly, the calves. Sometimes calves get neglected in strength training workouts. They're very important when it comes to, again, stability, mobility, gait speed, et cetera. So really, really important muscle to address.
Explain, if you can, to the listener kind of what this feels like. That's why I
Sure.
think doing a demo is so important. I want patients to be able to try it before they buy it, come in and have a demo, which we certainly offer that. But for the listeners, kind of explain in your words what this feels like.
So I would say 95% of people who try the service tell me that it feels weird. So that's the first word to describe it. And it's because it's something you've never felt before.
Yep.
I always talk about when I was a little girl, I always would play on the bar at the playground. I would hang from the bar by my knees and, try to do sit-ups, and it was easy as a child. If I were to do it now, and try to pull up to that 90-degree position and hold, it's more difficult because the
Yep.
core is just. But I liken it to that. Like that is probably the most difficult abdominal contraction that we can perform because we're fighting gravity, trying to hold ourselves in that 90-degree position, but it's beyond that. So super maximal, double what you can do in the gym at least. And it just feels like all of those muscles are being contracted involuntarily, while you just lay there passively.
It's like
So
it's hard to
no,
explain. Yeah. Yeah.
several different contraction patterns. So it's not
Yeah.
just one type of contraction. So I always
Yep.
say, when we work out in the gym, we're doing different things to try to develop the bicep or the abs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the device, BTL knows that in order to get the best appearance, the most muscle mass, we have to hit those muscles in different ways. So it has several different styles of contractions that it utilizes to best address the muscle contraction.
And then patients always say, well, am I going to be sore if I'm working out that hard? So answer that for me. Yeah.
Yeah, very common question as well. So if I did 20,000 crunches, I probably wouldn't be going anywhere for the rest of the week. But BTL has technology that is designed to take care of that for you. So there's a tapping phase in the contraction patterns, as well as the fact that lactic acid buildup is a little bit different when you're utilizing a device. So with those two different things combined, we can eliminate most soreness. Now, some people do say they feel like they did something. They might have a little bit of gym soreness in the treatment area, but nothing that would prevent you from going about your day as usual. Maybe just enough to say, yes, this is working.
Sure, sure. I want to go back to the in-body scan. The benefit of the in-body scan, which we're trying to do when we remember on every single patient now that comes into our office, is that we really can see, like you were explaining, the percent muscle mass and fat, body fat, right? Body fat percentage. So patients who are doing programs like semaglutide, tirzepatide, who are losing weight, sometimes lose muscle mass. Our goal is that they won't if they're upping their protein, taking perfect aminos, whatnot. But this is a great complement to those weight loss programs because, again, this will help them maintain the muscle. And we know muscle is the organ of longevity. Bottom line is if you get sick, you have cancer, right? As you age, you're going to survive. You're going to live longer the more muscle you have. So we want to make sure patients aren't losing muscle mass as they go through those weight loss programs. And so using the InBody, we can certainly monitor what they're losing, right? Or sometimes maybe patients say, well, my numbers aren't budging, on
Right.
semaglutide, but they're actually losing fat. And we can see
Absolutely.
that with the in-body. So we're
Yeah.
definitely able to offer that to our patients. And I think it's a great monitoring service for patients who are using semaglutide or tirzepatide.
So I always say muscle is the organ of longevity.
Yes.
Indeed. All of the studies are showing that the more muscle mass you have, the longer you live.
Period. Yep. Yep.
Period. Right. So anything that you can do to improve your muscle mass or prevent loss of muscle mass is beneficial to your health in many ways. We also
Yep.
talked about muscle mass and we talked about visceral fat loss. We believe that the visceral fat is being lost because of the improvement in muscle mass and therefore the improvement in metabolism. So muscle mass directly contributes to your metabolism. So the amount of
Yeah.
calories that you burn in a resting state. So just so many benefits to improving the amount of muscle you have in your body. Typically when you lose weight, regardless of how you do it, especially if you lose it fast, 30% of the weight loss is muscle. So, we're losing weight all over the body, but all the types of tissues, et cetera. So when you lose muscle mass, if you're not doing something, whether it be working out in the gym or Emsculpt Neo treatments, you'll feel less strength, less strong. So I think it's really important for people who are on medical weight loss to do some sort of a muscle building service. And we know too, if you're trying to optimize your hormones, this helps a lot to help improve muscle mass. So those on HRT are great candidates as well.
And you will have greater benefit from the Emsculpt Neo if you're on HRT because you need
Yes.
testosterone to help you
So
build muscle mass. So
I
yeah,
always say that if your
yep,
hormones are optimized, you'll have the best
better.
results.
Yes.
If for some reason you're feeling like you're struggling in the gym to build muscle, more than likely there might be a hormonal component that's involved. So
Yep.
I always say, it's best to combine multiple modalities for the most success. The in-body scale is another part of that. Having objective information so you can track your progress and see exactly how you're doing without getting frustrated looking in the mirror every single day helps us to realize, yes, this is making a difference. We are seeing progress and kind of stay the course.
Wonderful. Great summary of those two devices, the Emsella Chair and the Emsculpt Neo,
Yeah.
from a body standpoint. So I know we want to move on to face. So why don't we go through kind of the other, I don't even know what to say, the other devices that BTL offers. I would definitely want to talk about the Exion Tower and the pieces that come with that. So I'll let you, I don't have those yet, although the hope is in the future we would add some of these. So why don't you explain to us some of the other devices, maybe some of
Sure.
your favorites, yeah, that
So
BTL offers you.
Sure. I love wellness and functional living and health. And so I'm passionate about our body devices, but I'm extra passionate about our facial devices because I come from an facial aesthetic office, so med spa, where of course we were always trying to improve the aesthetic of the face. Skin is our largest organ, right? So anything we can do to improve the health of the skin is a win in my book. We have a couple of different devices that address facial concerns non-invasively. So that's huge because as we study aesthetics, we realize, first of all, there are changes going on at every single layer of the face, from epidermis, the top layer of the skin, to dermis, to SMAS, which is the connective tissue layer, and the muscle layer. Also, many of the aesthetic treatments are designed to kind of treat that top surface layer, but we've never really had a device or a treatment in the history of aesthetics to address that structural change that's going on, like we talked about on the body, the muscle mass loss, the falling, the descending, the fat pad thinning, et cetera. So BTL designed devices to do exactly that. So we've got two different devices. They can be combined on one tower. So it can be a bit confusing for people who aren't familiar, but basically BTL is always trying to be super innovative. And this year they designed a way to combine both of those devices on one tower for the sake of our providers who wanted to have all of the modalities to treat their patients. I'll go over Exion first. It has 4 different attachments that are available to our providers. We have an RF microneedling handpiece. We have a face handpiece. We have a body handpiece. And then we also have an MFEM, intimate wellness handpiece for women. So that device has the most amazing technology. Technology is not available on other devices, and it has artificial intelligence as well. So very cool device. It can treat all different facial concerns from hyperpigmentation to laxity in the skin, lines and wrinkles, thickness of the skin, We can volumize the face with our targeted ultrasound and radio frequency handpiece. Combining those two technologies simultaneously basically creates a thermal and mechanical damage to the skin. And we can improve hyaluronic acid levels in the face, in the lips, on the neck by 224%. So pretty amazing.
Is that with the face piece? Is that what the,
Yes,
yeah,
it's a
okay.
face piece. Our body hand piece is super incredible because we can address issues and concerns for men like gynecomastia, skin laxity for women who've had weight loss, or, you know, babies. All of us who have had children experience some level of skin laxity in the abdominal area. Or if someone's been a little bit on the heavier side and they do go through medical weight loss, they've got laxity on the arms and the body. So, you know, we lose the weight and then sometimes look in the mirror and realize that comes with some laxity of the skin. So that body hand piece enables us to target specific areas of fat, like bra fat, above the knee fat, and laxity all over the body. It's amazing. And then the RF microneedling it's kind of a gold standard.
Can I
Go ahead.
pause you? I want to go back to that. I just want to spend a little more time. There's just so much. I want to come back to what you, I guess, we're describing as the body hand piece. So
Yeah.
this, to my knowledge, again, and we don't have this piece yet, but I'm most interested in this. So to correct me if I'm wrong here, but with the body hand piece, we're using not ultrasound gel, but you use some sort of like body oil for the
Baby oil.
conductor, right? Baby oil. Okay.
Yeah. Baby oil.
And essentially, this heats up kind of differently than the Emsculpt Neo, right? So Neo is heating up the fat more deep, and this is more superficial. Is that right?
So it's all about energy penetration when it comes to radio frequency and depth of penetration. And the temperature is very important. So we know that fat cell apoptosis occurs at about 43 to 45 degrees Celsius. So depending on what your goals are, we want to heat that fat cell layer enough that we can basically cause cell death of the fat cell.
Right.
If skin laxity is your concern, we're not necessarily trying to penetrate deep enough to melt the fat. We're trying to heat the deep layer of the dermis, we call it the reticular layer, to about 41 degrees. So the temperature is different and the depth is different when we're trying to do some skin tightening. So this device, this body applicator, is designed to do both. You can choose. So it's got a cooling setting that basically determines the depth of penetration of the heat. And so we can dive deep to melt fat, or we can keep it a little bit more superficial if we really want to create some skin tightening. And you can also do both. So if someone has some skin laxity, a little bit of a fat pocket in a specific area, you can treat both.
So this is good for cellulite and obviously skin tightening, but fat
Yeah.
reduction from a cellulite standpoint, and then to
Right.
tighten that area, right?
Yeah, so it actually pairs really, really well with the Emsculpt Neo, because I'm thinking about glutes and backs of thighs treatment, really
Yep.
common area for people to want to treat because they have falling of the gluteus maximus muscle. They have some fatty deposits on the back of the thigh, and then some dimpling from
Yep.
those concerns. So when we combine Emsculpt Neo and we elevate the gluteus maximus by toning that muscle and creating more myofibrils, so there's like a natural lift, and then we remove some of the fat from the back of the leg, we can go in and it's almost like the airbrush tool with the body applicator to improve skin laxity, fine tune that cellulite look, and reduce the fat in specific areas, especially like that banana roll area right underneath the glute. So it's an amazing tool for, like I said, fine tuning. It can be used alone. So things like the bra fat area where Emsculpt Neo cannot be utilized because we don't have an indication for that area. The body applicator can be used to specifically target those concerns. So
Pretty
another
much
area.
anywhere Emsculpt Neo can't be used.
That's right.
Right. Okay.
Really common area to treat with it is above the knees. So again, gravity, skin laxity, we start to get that little bit of falling above the knee. A lot of us don't like the way that looks. So it can not only target the fat there, but it can improve the laxity of the skin. So super popular treatment with that body handpiece as well.
Before we get more to like RF microneedling, I think that's maybe where we were going next. I want to go back to M face though. So you kind of
Sure.
talked a little bit about this.
Yeah.
The same technology on the face, right? Because we don't want to lose muscle mass on the face. So M face is more like a non-surgical facelift, right? I mean,
So, we have the 4 components of Exion, and then M phase is a little bit of a separate type of treatment.
okay. I just see this is
So,
what I don't know.
yeah, so there are 2 towers. You have the ability to get 2 different towers. One's M phase, one is Exion. But just this year we combine them, and you can get them all on the same tower. So M-Face was previously a separate device. It's just about 2 years old, so newer technology. And
Yeah.
that device is designed to address structural changes happening at every single layer of the face. It's also got an applicator for the double chin, or what we call the submentum.
Yes. Yes.
It's targeted radio frequency and high Fez stimulation. So we utilized our technology from our body devices and created a facial muscle stimulation device so that we can address what's happening, which is elongation and falling of those facial muscles. So those, what I say is they thin and descend. Basically, just like the fat pads, they start to elongate and they fall, okay? With M-Face, we can create tone or shortening of the fibers, which causes basically a non-surgical facelift if we treat all three areas. So we can treat the forehead, the cheeks, and the submentum. We treat the elevator muscles of the face. So when you're getting injections like neurotoxin injections and things like that, we're trying to put the muscles to sleep. With M-Face, we wake them up, okay? But only the elevator muscles. So we don't want to strengthen or tone, I should say, the depressor muscles. We want positive expression. So excitement, joy, happiness, the smile muscles. And then there's a muscle down here called the digastric in the submentum under the chin area. And that actually starts to sag, sort of like the pelvic floor. And with that, you get falling of that hereditary fat pad that we all have. So some people think it's thickening of the fat pad, which it can be, but a lot of times it's related to the laxity of the skin, as well as that digastric muscle stretching out and getting a little bit more lax. So when we tighten the digastric, improve collagen and elastin with that radio frequency, and melt the fat pad under the chin, we can really get a lifting of that submentum area. And we've been able to completely remove some of those double chins for people who've always kind of struggled with that concern.
And that's incredible. Okay. Now let's go on to again, you've mentioned this a little bit already, but like the face piece and the RF microneedling.
Yeah, so two different hand pieces. We've got one targeted ultrasound and radio frequency handpiece. This is totally non-invasive. It uses ultrasound gel. We can break the face into multiple different areas. So for example, the forehead or the lips or the perioral lip lines, which we sometimes call smoker lines. So whatever your specific concern is, we can target that area alone, or we can do a full face treatment. Essentially what we're doing is, like I said, creating mechanical and thermal stress to the fibroblasts, and it kicks up production of collagen and elastin. And I describe those as the building blocks of the skin. So with more collagen and elastin, you get improvement in elasticity, improvement in volumization, and then also more hydration to the skin with that 224% improvement with the face handpiece. Some people really like this for the neck, the décolleté, and it's similar to what we're doing with the body handpiece, but this device uses ultrasound gel. Very popular with lips. So those who want to improve the amount of volume they have in their lips, because again, as we age, the volume decreases, but they don't necessarily want to use injectables. It's a great non-invasive option to give your lips a little bit of volume. Very popular in the under eye area as well, which a lot of us are concerned with.
Awesome. Okay. What about RF microneedling? As far as like, I think stretch marks, scar revision, like what is that most useful for?
So RF microneedling is kind of the gold standard when it comes to, like you said, scar remodeling. It's amazing on acne scars, stretch marks. It can really help with skin laxity as well. So I say things like jowling and sagging, the deeper lines and wrinkles, the more advanced concerns. We have a zone on the face called the marionette zone, which is around the mouth and kind of this jowl area. And women really start to get heaviness in this area as they age. We don't have facial hair that has like a firm structure like men do. That helps them to maintain some of their structure that we don't get to maintain. So with that, we do get that falling, a little bit more of that falling. So RF microneedling is great to combine with the face handpiece, with M-Face, or just itself. With RF microneedling, we basically have 36 gold-plated needles that we use to penetrate the skin and reach that reticular layer of the dermis, so we can deliver the energy, that radio frequency, right at that level. And it basically, it's a controlled damage or controlled injury to stimulate production of collagen and elastin by the fibroblasts. So that's what we're always trying to do with like radio frequency treatments and that mechanical ultrasound, is just improve collagen and elastin, because that is what contributes to elasticity. And then again, it can help to remodel scars. So scars are typically, and stretch marks are typically immature collagen and elastin. When we utilize these devices, we can force the body to lay down more mature collagen and elastin. So it helps with healing and it just kind of remodels the area.
Wonderful. Okay, so is that then similar technology for the MFEM? Am I saying that right? MFEM for the
So
vaginal rejuvenation? Yeah.
So MFEM is basically a lot like the face handpiece with that radio frequency. We have an intravaginal and an exterior component, so we can address labial laxity, vaginal concerns like tightening, uncomfortable intercourse,
Yep.
those types of things, and then blood flow to the vaginal area. So really, really helps with people who are post-childbirth or people who do have those spasms, many intimate wellness concerns, and then of course, laxity in the labia. So just like any other area of the body, when we start to experience some skin laxity, people struggle with that and might experience some side effects or symptoms based on the laxity or from the laxity. So our MFEM device can address both internal and external concerns.
Maybe I shouldn't ask this right now. We can totally cut this part out, but how does this compare to like the Mona Lisa? Is that the similar technology or do you know how to answer that?
Yeah, our device actually has 360 heating. It's an 8-minute treatment, so super comfortable. It's adjustable. We have different sizes on our MFEM handpiece. So it's, I think, the best because it, like I said, has 360 heating. So a lot of those devices have one-sided heating. They don't maintain temperature, so you're not really getting a lot of change or results. With our device, because it has 360 heating, we can do an 8-minute treatment and have an effective treatment. Some of the devices on the market require like 20 minutes and they're having to constantly move the probe in order to get to targeted temperature, which is obviously very uncomfortable for a female. With MFEM, it's basically like it's there and you're done. I mean, there's not a lot of movement, not a lot of
Do you feel heat? Is it uncomfortable?
It's usually warming, so similar
Warm.
to
Hmm.
what Emsculpt Neo feels like,
Okay.
or the face handpiece or the body handpiece. And again, it's adjustable. So our radio frequency is adjustable on the device. You can move it up, move it down. So you're in there with the patient, obviously,
Yep.
for those 8 minutes, and you can adjust it based on their comfort level. So people are all very different.
Yep.
But kind of surprised, that area, the sensation is not what we think. So it's kind of surprising. Sometimes people can tolerate quite a bit of radio frequency, but yes, customizable.
And that I want to say also is true for Emsculpt Neo, right? So when
Right.
you're mentioning the two different types of technologies, the high fem and the radio frequency, with both of those, we titrate, right? It's not that we just crank everybody up to 100%. Like you start low and then
Yeah.
we slowly work those up to desired like comfort. We never want this to be painful. It could be a little intense, but it's not supposed to be painful.
So all of our devices are very customizable and adjustable with energy settings. So whether it be high fem, high fez, radio frequency, all of that energy can be titrated and adjusted based on patient comfort. For example, on Emsculpt Neo, I always subjectively have the patient rate how they would rate that muscle contraction. Is it a 1? Is it a 7? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the intensity of that muscle contraction? And I never ever want people to be like 10 out of 10 uncomfortable. So I'm always interacting with the patient, trying to see how they would rate it, and then we adjust based on that. But it's designed to have customized settings because we're all so different. If we have a thicker layer of subcutaneous fat, typically we can tolerate a little bit more of that high fem energy.
Sure.
However, if you have a seasoned athlete who comes in and has a very thin layer of subcutaneous fat, if any at all, that energy is going straight to the muscle. And oftentimes they don't need quite as much because it's painful if we try to exceed,
Yeah.
15%.
So did we cover Exion? Did we miss anything on that?
So we talked about face, handpiece, RF microneedling, MFEM, and body. I think we've covered all of them. Is
Okay.
there anything else?
Well, I now want to talk about M-tone. I'm also
Yeah.
very interested in M-tone,
Um,
specifically for cellulite. So can you
Sure.
mention kind of that tech? So that's a little different, although there's some overlap there as well.
Yes.
But tell us what the application of that is for.
Sure. So M-tone is a device that was designed to address cellulite. So it's specifically for cellulite. It can see, or we can see, I should say, improvement to skin laxity concerns, but it's indicated for cellulite. So in cellulite, if you know kind of what's going on, there are bands, and we're able to basically manipulate enough to adjust how those bands are connected and remove the cellulite. So it's a series of treatments. Once again, we use a handpiece, and on this one, we use ultrasound lotion. So it's a little bit different types of things like baby oil, ultrasound gel, ultrasound lotion, but this one is lotion. We apply that to the patient's skin, and basically what the patient will feel is heating. It's kind of a loud device, makes some noise, but that's because it's breaking up those cellulite bands and really making a difference. We can really smooth out cellulite with the M-tone device. It's utilized a lot on the glutes, the backs and the thighs, but it can be used anywhere where you find cellulite.
So it's essentially, again, not that I know that much, I'm learning, it's loosening the fibrous bands that the cellulite's pooching through to produce more of this
Yeah.
smoothing of the skin,
Those
right?
bands are very, very tight. And when we have fat that surrounds the bands and not enough space for that fat, it'll pucker and you get that dimpling effect. So with M-Tone, we're able to loosen those bands, like you said, enough to kind of take the pressure off. And so things look much more smooth on the surface.
Does that hurt?
No, it's not
Okay,
painful.
okay,
Most of these devices, the most you'll feel is some heating. So
sure.
it's adjustable again. So oftentimes we have a higher setting at the beginning once the patient gets to target temperature. So all of our devices give feedback on them and we can watch the screen to kind of see, are we within that targeted temperature? Once we achieve that targeted temperature, we can back off on radio frequency and adjust the patient's treatment so that they're not only comfortable, but getting an effective treatment.
Sure. And am I correct in saying a lot of these treatment like protocols are similar to the Emsculpt Neo as far as once a week for 4 weeks sort of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of depends on the patient, their concern. The only one that's a bit different is the RF microneedling, and we now have a clear attachment. Those treatments are done spaced about 4 weeks apart and typically
Sure.
3 at a minimum in the series. With the clear applicator, we typically see results after 1, but we encourage a series of 3 just to get best results.
Sure.
But because those are more, we actually have needles on those devices, we recommend a little bit more space in between in a series of 3. Now, that being said, I talk about needles and most people are like, oh, that's not for me. Our device has artificial intelligence. So it's reading tissue impedance constantly throughout the treatment. And it will pull back on energy if the cell is being overtreated. So a lot of times pain with microneedling procedures comes from overtreating the cell and dehydrating the cell. When our device notices that that's happening, it pulls back on the energy. So it's a very comfortable procedure for the patient. I've been able to do my entire face, my abdomen, and friends and family face and abdomens without any numbing cream at all, which is very different from most microneedling or RF microneedling devices on the market.
Amazing. I want to try all these. Yeah, okay. Did we forget or overlook anything, or do you feel like you kind of got to share the strength in the BTL's technology and the devices that they offer?
Um, I feel like we covered most of it. What do you think? Is there anything
Oh, I
specific?
I definitely think we do, and I like how you mentioned to check out like before and after photos either on your Instagram, which I'll have you share that one here in a moment, or you can look at hashtags, probably like hashtag Exion, hashtag
Yeah.
Mtone, hashtag Emsculpt Neo, BTL, any of those, because there are some pretty compelling before and after photos. Well,
I do.
tell us where listeners can find you. Speaking of Instagram, what's your Instagram handle?
My Instagram is at BTL_Natalie. On my Instagram, you can find all kinds of before and after photos, animations that talk about devices and the specific concerns they can treat. You can also hashtag several different hashtags like Exion USA, BTL Aesthetics, Emsculpt Neo. Instagram is full of all kinds of videos, reels, before and after photos, so you can see exactly what we've been talking about today. We also have a website, so btlaesthetics.com. On there, you can take a look at the devices, what they look like, see some before and after photos, and then of course, Dr. Gray's site as well.
Well, in closing here, for listeners, if you like what we heard, we will be having an event that we would love to invite you to Tuesday evening, November 12th. We're going to have a holiday sip and sculpt event, kind of like our initial launch when we purchased these devices. And Natalie's going to be presenting, educating on these devices and providing demos. So I would encourage that you RSVP to either the 4 or the 5:30 p.m. session. You can call the clinic 319-363-0033, or you can email us info@ihhclinic.com. Do you have anything to add about the event, Natalie? I know you were wonderful at the past events that we've had.
Yes, I'm
Anything
super excited to be there. I can't wait to meet some of your patients again. It's always a joy to be inside the Integrative Health and Hormone Clinic. I'm there for your questions. So if you have any specific questions or if some of this speaks to you and you're like, you know what, I struggle with that, I'd like to ask her questions about my concerns. That's what I'm there for. So I'd love to help each of you individually. Please approach me, chat with me about your concerns. I can tell you about my personal experiences I've heard from other patients, and I'd be happy to help you and help doctor with a treatment plan that best suits your needs.
Awesome. Thank you. I was just realizing I forgot to ask about when you're thinking of patients, maybe thinking about their individual questions, they may be wondering about any contraindications to any of the Exion services. I immediately thought, okay, well, what about metal in the mouth? But it sounds like even dental fillings are not a contraindication.
We should go over
So
that.
yeah, yeah.
So with Epsilon and Emphase, there are just a couple of contraindications. So we don't want any metal in the treatment area. For example, if you have a piece of metal in your jaw, or in your thoracic spine, we don't want you to be treated. However, if you do have metal dental fillings or metal implants, that is not a contraindication. So does not exclude you from being able to be treated with Emphase or Exion. So again, just let us know if you have specific things you're wondering about, because if it's not in the treatment area, a little bit different than the Emsculpt Neo and the Emsella Chair. For example, if you have a total knee, that is not a contraindication, just no metal in the treatment area.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, we kind of already heard where listeners can find you on Instagram. What did you say your handle though?
Uh, at BTL_Nat.
Got it. Okay. And then last but not least, I always ask my guests their top longevity tip. So if you had one tip to provide, what would your top longevity tip be?
I think my top longevity tip is to walk outside with a friend every single week, at least once a week. So I think about longevity and all the different things that contribute to wellness, longevity. And I think walking outside with a friend addresses lots of different things like friendship and socializing, managing stress, regular exercise, keeping your brain active if you're having engaging conversations. So I try to stick to that goal of walking with a girlfriend every single week, at least once a week.
I love it. I'm gonna have to implement that. No one has said that yet in
So
four
good for the
years. Yeah, so that's unique. Great longevity tip. Well, thank you again for coming on the show today and sharing about such exciting new non-surgical body and face devices available at our clinic and around the nation. I know I certainly look forward selfishly to seeing the transformation on my body, but also on my patients. So again, everyone, we invite you to our event. You can meet Natalie there. Thanks for joining me.
Looking forward to seeing you. Thank you very much for having me.